In a year, 300 million tubes of toothpaste are used in just the UK. In the US, 34.6 million Americans consumed 16 or more bags of potato chips in the year 2020, meaning we ate well over 500 million bags of chips that year. You might be wondering, what do those stats have to do with each other? And to that I say, these two objects, toothpaste tubes and potato chip bags, are metal, or rather contain metal, aluminum specifically.
Aluminium is the third most abundant element in the Earth's crust and has high recycling rates, making aluminium a reliable partner for a sustainable future. Compared to primary aluminium, only 5% of the energy is needed to remelt aluminium and use it again, and 75% of the aluminium ever produced is still in use today.
Because it can be recycled so efficiently and at such a high amount, it has a nearly infinite lifetime, but there's a point where some aluminum can't easily be recycled anymore, so instead it's shipped off to a landfill where it sits for the rest of its life, and that unrecyclable aluminum commonly takes the form of, you guessed it, chip bags and liquid tubes. So we open a bag of chips. What's inside? This is a standard Frito-Lay bag, the company that makes Doritos, Lay's, Cheetos, Sun Chips, Smart Food, Roll Gold, the list goes on. It's obvious right away, this looks metallic, and it is. It's around 30% aluminum and what we call a laminate. Essentially, these bags are made with a thin foil layer of aluminum that then has plastic layered over it, along with ink and other stuff to give it its colors and branding. The aluminum serves as a moisture barrier so your chips aren't soggy when you open them, because just the plastic, which is usually polyethylene terephthalate, is rather porous and will let outside moisture into the bag. This is a standard popcorners bag. Looking inside, you might say, hey, that's not shiny, that's not aluminum, but it's still almost 20% aluminum. It's also just coated with a compound called titanium dioxide, which adds an opaque white pigment to the packaging. It's made the same way Frito-Lay's makes their chip bags and is equally as unrecyclable. But what do we mean when we say unrecyclable? Well, you can imagine that when aluminum is in a product like a soda can, that it's fairly easy to recycle. But if you squish that can down to a film, laminate it in plastic, then tell someone to get the aluminum back out, you're gonna have a bit of a problem. It is technically possible to recycle the aluminum in laminates, but it's difficult to do. In 2013, researchers were trying to delaminate the layers of chip bags using supercritical ethanol and acetone. It was successful in separating the plastic and metal layers into a recyclable state. It just takes 2 hours, and supercritical ethanol at 243.1 degrees Celsius and 6.37 megapascals. Not to mention the 4 hours for delamination sitting in nuclear acetone at 50 degrees Celsius. Given that those studies were a decade ago and we couldn't find mention of facilities where chip bags are being power washed by ethanol in our research, it's clear that, while possible, this method simply isn't efficient enough. So then when we can't recycle the products we've made, we turn to looking at making alternatives to those products that achieve the same purpose, but are sustainable. In 2010, Frito-Lay, or specifically the brand Sun Chips, came out with a new bag derived from cornstarch bioplastic that is 100% compostable. So we should celebrate, this is a big win, right? Or have you never heard of this bag because, well, it was the opposite of celebrated?
Frito-Lay, they launched this bag 18 months ago, all excited about it. It was 100% compostable. The only problem? It sounds like a hailstorm. What? So they've had so many complaints, apparently, about the bag. They're now switching back to the old one, which you cannot compost or recycle. Well, they look to find a new one. Sales of Sun Chips are down 11% over the year.
The bags were comically loud of all things, and as a result, people largely denounced them. The decibel at which the bag crinkles is more important than what a change like that could mean for the environment, which continues to get flooded with the millions of products we send to landfills every year. Moral of the Sun Chip bags? People don't care. Or at least in 2010 they didn't. It might be a different story now that environmental activism and the effects of climate change have been more and more evident. But we'll touch on that later. For now, it's time to take another deep dive into another not-so-success story of replacing a laminate with a recyclable alternative. Toothpaste tubes, you know the drill. This is another fun little aluminum plastic laminate. 69% in fact. Aluminum is here just because this is kind of how toothpaste tubes were always made. They were directly inspired by completely aluminum oil paint tubes, but majority aluminum tubes, this one here being 98% aluminum, tend to tear very easily and be very sharp when they do, and they also aren't ideal for having to squeeze something out flat like you do with the toothpaste tubes. Incorporating plastic into the mix of aluminum just helps keeps the tubes flexible, soft, and not bursting at the seams when you fold them. And this is just plastic. It's HDPE, or high-density polyethylene, and largely marketed as recyclable. Unlike plastic used in the aluminum laminate tubes and even chip bags, HDPE is way less porous, so it can have that moisture barrier without the use of a metal. Colgate and a few other companies kept pushing statements about this change, saying over and over how good it was that they were now making an HDPE tube so it was completely recyclable. Are these tubes really recyclable? Yes, and that's great, but are they really recycled? As of 2023, no. There's a key difference between something being recyclable and the rate at which it's actually recycled. To start, people have to put their tubes in the recycling bin, which, if not evident by things like plastic bottles that get tossed instead of recycled, is the first hurdle, but definitely not the biggest. Even when these tubes do end up in the recycling stream, there's still a high chance they end up kicked out, because not all recycling programs take HDPE plastic. But let's say that we're lucky and the particular center it does go to takes HDPE. Well, then the tubes are still likely to end up in a landfill. A couple brands' toothpaste tubes might be recyclable now, but certainly not every brand. And the simple truth is, workers sorting through items just don't have the time to check if every toothpaste tube they find is actually recyclable. They just have to indiscriminately toss them at a lot of facilities. They don't have the resources to sort by brand instead of just product type. So were the aluminum tubes actually better? No, we run into the same problem of the mix of plastic and aluminum being hard to separate. In 2015, research at the University of Cambridge found a way of microwaving aluminum toothpaste tubes, which no, you should not try at home, that was successful in separating materials, given that you had a microwave filled with nitrogen and could cook your little laminate scraps at 600 degrees Celsius. To their credit, they formed the group Envel Limited, which in 2015 could handle recycling 2,000 tons of laminate packaging annually. Of course, that's just a small dent in the estimated 160,000 tons of laminate used in the UK that year, so the better option to reduce waste as of right now is still to stop producing it. But if plastic doesn't work and aluminum tubes don't work, what can we do? Not brush our teeth? Well, we can still brush them, just maybe not with paste out of a tube. There are far more sustainable options for dental hygiene than squeezing goop from a container that's designed so we can't even empty out all the product we paid for. Instead of clinging on to that idea of a single-use plastic and/or aluminum tube, what if we just used refillable pump dispensers like we do with hand soaps? Life Supplies is a company doing it. They make everything refillable with 1 to 3 month refills and will take all their packaging back to make sure it really does get recycled. There's also things like glass toothpaste jars, toothpaste powder, which is actually kind of what people used before the invention of the paste, solid dental sticks, or bars you apply like soap to your teeth, and these tablets that you chew on until they become toothpaste you then brush with. It might seem strange at first, but buying a pile of tablets is certainly easier to travel on a plane with. Plus, the packaging on toothpaste in tablet form can actually be biodegradable instead of having to be non-porous with HDPE or laminates. So if these solutions exist, why aren't we using them? Because it's a change. It's alien to us. We grew up with toothpaste in tubes, and these changes, having to refill or chew your toothpaste, they aren't welcome. We barely know about these products, and when we do learn about them, we poke fun, because it seems ridiculous. Sustainable alternatives just aren't respected. Or they weren't, but we could open our doors to them now. The ideal life of a product is achieved when the loops of its materials' lifespans are closed, either via recycling, biodegrading, reusing. Realistically, how much of what we're already mass-producing and dumping in landfills can we really recycle? How can we close the loop? For a lot of our trash, like laminates, we can't, or we don't. Not at such a high investment of time and resources. But again, what we can do is stop producing so much non-recyclable waste in the first place. If we have more companies switching to sustainable products, we reduce the amount of indelible waste from the source. But also, with the rise of truly recyclable products, we can inspire change in the way our recycling system operates, so it can process all those HDPE tubes instead of dumping them. How do we bring about this change? We have to talk about it, and we have to change our mindset when it comes to the things we buy. Not everything can happen all at once, but if there's one thing that does influence the production choices of companies, it's the market. We are the market. Eco-anxiety wasn't nearly as widespread 5 years ago as it is now. The market is primed for this change. All we have to do is give it a little nudge. If we as the market stop buying unsustainable products, companies will see that the way they can keep making money is by also producing sustainable products. That can eventually mean every brand is making chewable toothpaste tablets or just making plastic tubes at a scale where we can adapt our recyclable sorting system to accommodate them. We can lean away from the amount of aluminum we're dumping into the ground, and we're ready to improve our bioplastics to be quieter if they must be. We can choose to support sustainable companies that will actually alter our waste production and ability to close the loop. Or at the very least, send a message. We need to get the people to look at this problem head on.